In the previous theory video, whose link is given in the description, we studied the major and minor modes of diatonic scales and described in detail how to obtain the natural minor scale of A from the C major scale. This video has as its main objective to obtain the rest of the natural minor scales. This will complete the process of obtaining the fundamental scales in the production of music in Western culture. The scales are of such importance that to reinforce what we have learned about them, we will consider three methods for the generation of the natural minor scales. The first one consists of using the sequence of intervals that form it: tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. To obtain the C natural minor scale using this method, we will start with a sequence of 8 notes on the staff, which begins on the note C. From C to D there is one tone, correct interval. From D to E there is one tone, incorrect interval, the note E is lowered one semitone. From E flat to F there is one tone, correct interval. From F to G there is one tone, correct interval. From G to A there is one tone, incorrect interval, the note A is lowered one semitone. From A flat to B there are 3 semitones, incorrect interval, the note B is lowered one semitone. From B flat to C there is one tone, correct interval. The scale has been completed, and we proceed to identify it as a C minor scale. Next we will show the scales obtained by this method for the following 2 natural notes taken as tonic. It is convenient that you use them to practice it. The advantage of this method is that it is of general application, and only requires the interval formula to be applied, so you can use it to obtain the scales of the other modes shown in the table to the right. Remember that the major scales correspond to the Ionian mode, and the minor scales to the Aeolian mode. It is very convenient for the case where the scale of a particular tonic is required for any of these modes. However, it requires care in its application, so it is not suitable for producing a listing of several scales. The following 2 methods use information available from other scales to facilitate this task. Note that the results obtained by application of this method, and the interval sequence of the natural minor scales itself, indicate that these can be obtained from their corresponding major scales by reducing the 3rd, 6th, and 7th degrees by one semitone. We will use this observation in the following method. In this screen we show some details of the generation of natural minor scales by reducing by one semitone in the 3rd, 6th, and 7th degrees of their corresponding major scale. This fact has been expressly indicated below the title of this section. The application of this method is very simple, but requires knowledge of the major scale for the tonic under consideration. Because of its simplicity, we have provided as the only example the case of the C natural major and minor scales, and with them we illustrate on the ukulele fretboard that the relationship between the degrees of these scales has an important practical implication for the determination of the fingerings of minor scales and chords given the fingerings of major scales and chords. Below the scales are shown their corresponding fingerings with open notes on the first 3 strings of a ukulele. Note that since the notes E, A, and B correspond to the 3rd, 6th, and 7th degrees of the C major scale, the notes E flat, A flat, and B flat must be fingered in the corresponding C minor scale, which implies moving up 1 fret the fingering of these notes on the fretboard, and in case it is not possible, because it is an air note, move the fingering to the fret corresponding to the flatted note on the next lower string, which is the case of the notes E and A. Next we will show the implication of this fact on the fingering of the C minor chord in this region of the fingerboard. On this screen, the C major chord, made up of the notes C, E, and G, corresponding to the 1st, 3rd, and 5th degrees of the scale, is displayed on the ukulele fingerboard located below the C major scale. To determine the C minor chord on the fretboard located below the C minor scale, we simply must lower the E note by a semitone to a major 3rd interval of the tonic, that is, replace it with the note E flat to obtain a minor 3rd interval, and repeat the note G on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, since the notes F and A flat are not part of the major chord. Procedures such as the one indicated greatly facilitate familiarization with the minor scales and chords on an instrument, once we know their corresponding minor scales and chords. We will study them in greater detail when we consider the implementation of scales and chords on the ukulele and the Venezuelan cuatro fretboards. Next, we will consider the generation of the natural minor scales using their corresponding relative major scales. At the beginning of this video, it was pointed out that its main objective is to obtain all the natural minor scales, in order to complete the process of obtaining the fundamental scales in the production of music in Western culture. The method that best lends itself to achieving this goal is the use of the relative major scales to obtain their corresponding relative minor scales, as described in the previous theory video dedicated to the study of the major and minor modes of diatonic scales, the link to which is given in the description. This is because the method is very easy to apply, and in the minor scales thus obtained the accidentals will appear in the same orderly way as in their relative major scales, the scales succeeding each other by fifths and adding a new accidental in each new scale. As with the major scales, we will present the minor scales in two groups, those containing sharps and those containing flats. As a reminder of the method used in the video corresponding to the major and minor modes, we show how to obtain the first three natural minor scales. The natural minor scale of A is obtained by starting the C major scale on the nota corresponding to its sixth degree, and does not require transposition to stay mostly in the region corresponding to the 5 lines of the staff. The E natural minor scale is obtained by starting the G major scale on the note E corresponding to its sixth degree, and requires transposition down an octave to stay mostly in the region corresponding to the 5 lines of the staff. The B natural minor scale is obtained by starting the D major scale on the note B corresponding to its sixth degree, and does not require transposition. The following is a complete listing of the C major scale and the 7 major scales containing sharps, and of the A natural minor scale and the 7 natural minor scales containing sharps. In the list of the major scales, it is observed that each new scale appears at an interval of a fifth in an ascending direction from the previous scale, and that it has a new sharp in its 7th degree. In the list of the minor scales, it is observed that each new scale appears at an interval of a fifth in an ascending direction from the previous scale, and that it has a new sharp in its 2nd degree. The following is a complete listing of the C major scale and the 7 major scales containing flats, and of the A natural minor scale and the 7 natural minor scales containing flats. In the list of the major scales, it is observed that each new scale appears at an interval of a fifth descending from the previous scale, and that it has a new flat in its 4th degree. In the list of the minor scales, it is observed that each new scale appears at an interval of a fifth descending from the previous scale, and that it has a new flat in its 6th degree. We have concluded our tour of the process of generating natural minor scales. As you progress in your study of music theory and in learning musical instruments, you will make use of the concepts introduced in this video. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you find it very useful.